Chapter 2. The Wyvern in the Well. As is often the way, time passes and young boys grow up. Waywardness and hobbies of their youth often give way to more grown-up activities. John grew into his responsibilities, left the area, joined the Crusades, and spent years overseas. Since that day by the river, John never spent a single moment thinking about the creature that was thrown into the well. The creature, however, did not forget John. It did spend some time in the well, forgotten and discarded, but it did not stay there, and soon the villagers and the surrounding countryside came to know the creature very well. For some time after being unceremoniously dumped in the well, the creature, Ryress, was shocked at the outcome of being hauled out of her watery haven, then thrown away like she was some old mutton bone only fit for the hounds. Initially, Ryress nursed her sore mouth and sulked, silently cursing to herself the misfortune at being in this predicament. But being a resourceful creature, she turned her mind to how to get out of the well. How indeed? For while the walls were hewn from rough stones, they were very high for a little water creature who also did not have any legs yet. They were yet to grow. So, for now, Ryress just had to wait and bide her time. She would normally have gone through her development in the river, but a well would have to do for now. The weeks grew into months, and Ryress waited. Tucked into a small hole in the rocks of the well, she fed on small animals, insects, and anything unfortunate enough to fall in. The rest of the time, she focused her energy into growing. As the heady summer days turned to cold, blustery autumn, Ryress uncurled herself from her rocky home and stretched. The well had become very cramped. She needed to leave. She admired her adolescent body, pleased at how the scales shimmered as the water ran off them. She marvelled at the length of her little claws that even now looked as sharp as razor blades. As she shook herself, water droplets flew off and fell into the bottom of the well like rain. A smile grew across her face, a smile full of sharp teeth, a smile that would make mothers grab their children close and young couples run for home in horror. Ryress had grown. She was now about as big as a large dog, but that was as far as the similarity ended. The flat, rough scales that John had found so intriguing were now hardened. The iridescent blues were still there, but the black had almost taken over her entire being. As she moved, the waves of colour shimmered across her body in what she thought was a very pleasing manner. She grinned again and purred. It was the kind of noise that you feel through your body, a deep rumble from the bowels of the earth. Loose stones and gravel from the well walls fell as they were dislodged by the vibrations, and as the purr faded, she stretched out from her rocky home and reached up to the rough stones. Digging her claws into the crevices, she tentatively tried to see if they would take her weight. Taking a breath, then another, she took a few more slow and deliberate steps, feeling a new strength flow into her muscles. Slowly and steadily, she inched her way up towards the top of the well. The fresh air tasted delicious as she leaned towards the moment of her freedom, until she stood on the top of the well. As the wicked smile played across her lips, she stretched fully, luxuriating in the feeling of having space. She looked down at herself. The long, thin child had filled out across the midsection and hips, and the new legs would become more muscled in time. Her tail was magnificent. As she stretched out the large fan at the end, she half jumped, half slithered off the edge of the well. Moving over to the riverbank, she peered at her reflection in the water. Her head was still quite broad. Some extra scales above her eyes had hardened, sticking up in such a fashion that it almost looked like a crown. and she turned her head back and forth, admiring the view. Her eyes were the same colour as her scales. At first glance, the impression was that of pools of black ink. However, when she moved her head, they flashed with shades of blue, which she also found very pleasing. Ryress was no longer a worm. She was a wyvern. Although the word worm was often used indiscriminately to describe her race, it was what most wyverns thought a derogatory terminology. Wyverns can be vain. In fact, they have a propensity for it, which often led to their downfall. Ryress dragged her gaze away from her reflection and looked up to the darkening sky. A storm was rolling in over the forest, and she thought it rather fitting. As the first rumble of thunder could be heard in the distance, she answered it with a tentative roar. It wasn't a large or even impressive noise, and she was actually glad that there wasn't anyone around to hear it. She shook herself again, stretching out her short front legs that were fused to the membrane of her wings. She shook herself a third time, a bit more vigorously, stretched her neck up into the air, and as the third and loudest rumble of thunder sounded over the forest, she roared, proclaiming, "I am here! I have arrived! I am coming!"